So Saru, warm welcome to Alan Speaks.
Thank you so much, Upendra. Actually, let me start by thanking all of you for inviting me. It's been, I think, close to 28 years since I looped back with the team in Simsa. So thank you so very much for having me here. And I can tell you that I have a million fond memories of the time I spent in Simsa. I don't know whether you still have the Maggie Point or not, but I've spent a lot of time eating Maggie there. There used to be a dahi batata puri joint just outside, campus, along with the cutting chai. I think I lived on that for 2 years, and we used to have these crazy Khandala trips where we used to all go and basically have a party. We used to say this is a bonding trip for organizational behavior learning, but we used to simply party. And we used to sometimes sneak into medical student classes on the first floor. I don't know whether that wing is still there or not. But I have a long list here of all the things that happened to me, when I got the invite. So thank you for having me over.
All right. Saru, great to have you. And Arvind confirms Maggie House is still there. So when you're
Awesome.
in Bombay next, we'll catch up for a Maggie. Okay. So for everyone on the group on the forum today, Saru is a veteran. She's worked with Citibank, she's worked with Max Life, American Express, and now working with the cutting edge team at IndWealth. Saru, to kick this off, you're with IndWealth. So what really are you doing there now, and how's the journey been?
So, Upendra, I joined IND Well just under a year ago. I'll finish a year in September, which is next month. And it's been a very exhilarating journey thus far. I come from, a very heavy weight, hardcore BFSI background. If you look at my, track record, I've been a banker throughout. I did a little bit of insurance for about, a year and a half during my career, but otherwise a hardcore banker and a retail banker at that. Right now in IND Wealth, I'm truly enjoying the power of attempting to create impact in financial services by making very simple modules, user friendly modules for customers, so that if you want to demystify what an asset and a liability means, and if you want to demystify what it is equal to really achieving your financial goals, if you want to understand all the things you need to do without having to create complex Excel sheets so that you can achieve your financial goals and make your money work harder for you. IND Wealth Super Money app is exactly trying to do that. So I'm very passionate about the journey that I'm on, and I'm loving it.
Awesome. So clearly the energy is oozing from every pore in your body. But I must ask you this. So there are many professionals who are moving from what I would say are classical institutions and now moving, for the lack of any other term, to a newer age way of work, a newer age approach to consumer proposition design, and so on. How has that journey been for you?
Very very interesting. So I have this quote that is written on my work desk. I'll read it for you. I mean, I've memorized it now because I read it every day. But there's a futurist called Alvin Toffler. He's basically made a huge impact in my thinking. There's a very simple quote he has which says that the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but actually those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And if you really ask me, uh, Alvin, I don't know him, right? But he occupies a very important space in my life. I read, this quote every day, and I think I'm trying to imbibe this whole philosophy of, truly loving yourself and, truly make. I mean, knowledge is free, right, Alvin? That's what Alvin, taught me, right? How can you learn, unlearn, and relearn without spending money? Is because knowledge is free. Yeah. So why not make the most of it and go and make a true impact to what you believe in?
All right. So that's why we were exchanging the joke on learning and unlearning earlier. Got it. All right, you got me on that one. But sorry to help me on. So to help us understand, if you were to kind of break this down, what could be the fundamental differences between working for a classical institution and maybe a newer age one, be it in terms of culture, approach to consumer, approach to solving a problem? If you were to break it down, what are the top two or three things which come to your mind?
So I think, I look at it a little perhaps differently. Uh,
Sure.
there are 4 or 5 principles that I've always used, when taking a decision on what I want to do with uh, making, a career, or, my next journey or my next gig, as we call it now. I think the first one is be curious. And what I feel, most of the old age BFSI, companies, for all the right or wrong reasons, are straddled with old processes, and a lot of that is no longer important from a consumer lens. And Philip Kotler's old adage that customer is king is actually even more true now than it perhaps used to be 30 years ago. Today's consumer is himself on the go, and will not have the patience to wait for your company to learn or unlearn and change the way he or she experiences your brand. So I think being curious is one big driving principle, and a lot of people out there are losing the plot on curiosity, and they're not changing the brand affinity, or the what the brand personifies to the latest mega trends in the industry. So that's one. I think the other big, thing out there is how many times are we waking up in the morning and acquiring new skills? In the old world, I used to feel that you have hierarchies, so you're everybody's supposed to do a job, and that truly takes away from innovation. It takes away from a desire to disrupt, and it never allows new things to come about. So if I have an office of 2,500 people, I'll have a hierarchy where the zonal head will be responsible for something, your strategy team will be responsible for something, and so on and so forth. And as you keep growing more and more senior, you forget to acquire new skills. And I think because leadership from the top really drives the culture in an organization. If the top manager doesn't think about acquiring new skills and is afraid of rolling up sleeves, to learn how to send a Google, Hangout invite or a Zoom invite and be able to, use technology, I think, we are all in the long run headed for trouble. So I think be curious, acquiring new skills. Another one of my favorites is something I learned many years ago, and I've kept it very close to my heart. It's called painting your canvas. Years ago, Upendra, you may remember when we were just joining our companies, a lot of our supervisors would basically tell us, hey, listen, I want this done, do it anyhow, but just deliver me the output in this time. And I think what that allowed a lot of us to achieve in a very limited span of time was the famous Indian Jugaad, right? We found a way of making it happen, and we were
Correct.
excited about burning midnight oil, and we were basically painting our canvas, least bit worried about the associated risks or the associated compliances. And all of that, right, was with keeping the customer in the center. I think a lot of big institutions are now losing the plot on letting youngsters or even all levels of middle management or senior management truly paint your canvas. And some of it I think is coming from, is there enough trust available within the system from an accountability standpoint, right? And if there's too many accountability matrix, a risk taking appetite goes out the window. So I think painting
Sure.
your canvas as a philosophy is not available in many companies. And I think last but not the least, how many of us are waking up and saying, you know what, if something is broken, I will fix it. So be the
Ownership.
change you wish to see. And you can I mean, So NPS, I'll take an example, right? NPS is a very well-established tool for most companies. However, even though customers are, giving you feedback on what's not working, is the final decision being taken on the basis of what the consumer really needs, or is it being taken on the basis of, a P&L? Is the P&L resilient enough to support innovation? If it's not, are you reinventing products to keep pace with changing times? Do customers really appreciate, what you're selling? And all of these, things, I think today, if I were to just compare BFSI in the, in the past versus what BFSI needs to be in the future, I find many of us, need to reimagine banking. And that's one of the reasons, why I chose this journey, because I want to make a real impact, um, and reimagine banking. Is this what our kids want? Is this how they want to bank? That if I want to write a check, if I want to send you a payment, Upendra, for 1.5 crores, trust me, I'll have to sign a piece of paper. Otherwise, you won't get the money, because there'll be a control, right, on the amount that I can safely transmit to you. And there are multiple
Correct.
such use cases where I think it's difficult to deal with, with money without, paper, which is not what today's generation wants. So long
Okay.
answer to your question, but
No, no, I was making notes. So curiosity, new skills, painting your canvas, jugaad, and I've termed it as ownership. So, Saru, what the thought today was to basically try and make this more future looking in terms of what's really happening in financial services, but you also need to step back. But since you raised that question about consumer centricity, and it's something which has been troubling me, does consumer centricity and true consumer centricity lead to value destruction in the form which you know it? So I'll give you an example. So if it's about a credit card, right? A credit card institution makes money when A, the guy revolves, and the B doesn't make the payment on time. Now, logically, from a consumer centricity, you don't want the guy to miss that deadline, but you actually make money when the guy misses the deadline. So is it easier for someone who's coming from an outside vis-a-vis someone who's inside, where they actually need to destroy their own value balance sheet and P&L? Is it easier said than done?
I think that's a really, really great question. Let me see if I can break it into 3 or 4 cohorts. Okay.
Sure.
I think, the first cohort is actual knowledge, and we'll elaborate on this, credit card example of yours. It's a topic very close to my heart. Uh, in the case of a credit card, right? What are you really doing or delivering, right? In terms of value, you're basically delivering a payment instrument to someone who doesn't have money in the bank account, but wants to spend to buy the favorite shirt or favorite, vacation or whatever he or she wants to buy, right?
Sure.
At the heart of it, that's all that a credit card is, right? It's a payment instrument so that I can, spend money when I don't have money in my savings account, or right. Now, in
Sure.
this, particular scenario, uh, why do we not tell the user the trade-off in revolving on the card and paying 37% per annum versus simply dipping into, his or her savings account and taking, 20,000 rupees off? Or why don't we simply tell the user, hey, listen, why do you want to revolve at 37%? I see that you have 15 lakh rupees lying in your mutual funds. You know what? Just take a loan against investments at 9.99%.
Yes.
But will the sales guy who's selling you the credit card, right, or the online journey that you're using to buy the card, the risk of not paying on time and the associated economic hit that you will take as a user? So while financially the companies will benefit from revolver behavior, if I'm a bank, I'll benefit from a revolver behavior. But if I'm a customer centric company, I will actually tell you not to revolve. And I think that, you've in many ways hit the nail on the head by asking me the question. The reason why a lot of people perhaps are not able to disrupt is because of strategically what it will do to their brand value, to their share price, to the revenue model, to the organization structure, because there's a lot of expense that is revolving on the revenue model, right? It's like at the heart of it, a P&L disruption as well, right? And it's a tough decision to take if you're a established brand for over 100 years or 200 years, which is true for most of the well-established BFSI players around the world.
So would it be fair to say that, I mean, if you skip the romance of it away, it is a fairly brutal, heavy decision from a value perspective? And I don't think it's that people don't know what's to be done, but it's a very brutally harsh decision to be taken.
Well, I think if I were to, wear the hat of a decision maker in a company which has very well established processes, what are the 4 or 5 things that will weigh on my mind? I think the first thing that will weigh on my mind is, do we have the right technology to be able to cause the disruption, right? At the heart of why new age players like IND Wealth or many fintechs around the world, like Monzo is a challenger bank, for example, N26 is a
Right.
challenger bank, and all of these companies now have huge valuations, right? Why are they able to deliver a simple user experience, even though intuitively a lot of us know what the users want? Having the right tech skill set, that's one whole debate out there. The other debate out there is, I might know all the risk principles and all the P&L levers, but do I have a data mindset or a engineering mindset to be able to solve the problem in a very simplified way? Am I thinking, about design? Am I thinking about user journeys and experiences? How many of our business, heads around the, world are equipped to think about ubiquity, for example, right? I mean, if ubiquity is now a done thing, correct? You can't launch a product in the fintech world if it's not ubiquitous. But do we really understand the importance of net banking going live before your call center getting equipped? So the whole servicing infrastructure, the whole technology infrastructure is another thing that will weigh on a leader's mind. And I guess a linked point to this is, how do you reskill your people? It's a huge effort, right? And also, I would think that if this trend catches on, I'll simply buy out the company.
Sure.
I mean, strategically, a lot of global companies have now set aside money to buy out companies if they're disrupting a fundamental consumer behavior and tapping into it for revenues.
So, Saru, since you spent a lot of time in banking, I mean, you steered Suvidha in its very early days. I noticed that. You've done quite a few things which are fairly early in their market, right? And you're also very familiar with lending many products. We often talk about product simplification, product simplicity. My question is, so let's come back to the credit card, right? Essentially about risk and it's about pricing. Same goes with insurance. Is it possible to genuinely simplify products? Because when you take risk itself has so many layers to it. Is it possible to design simple products in a complex subject like risk?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really, good question, Upendra. Let's, think about some of the simple, data points that are, now available, and really brings me to how do you link your business model to emerging mega trends, right? When you and I were in the prime of our careers, we did not have as much data as is available today. I mean, each one of us, if our location services is on, is telling a lot to the mobile operator, right? Where are we? What are we doing? If I read your SMSs, I know where you're spending. I know whether you're paying your bills on time or not. I know whether you're getting reminder calls for collections or not. Your LinkedIn profile is the only resume that matters, right? People, I think, guard their LinkedIn profile far much more than worrying about spelling mistakes on a Word document called your resume, right?
Sure.
Uh, so with some of these enriched data points that are emerging, AI and machine learning can pretty much calculate for you as the risk head of a company what is the probability of default on a credit card,
Sure.
and is all of that really being harnessed other than by the fintech ecosystem? I'm just taking the credit card
Okay.
example, for now. Similar
Sure.
trend lines exist in many lines of product. Let's take insurance for as an example. Are we doing enough in insurance to reimagine planning for retirement? One mega trend for India and around the world is that joint families as a concept are gone. Most
Sure.
families have a single kid. Very rarely do you now find working people having two children, and increasingly there'll be a lot of us who will be empty nesters with no income support from a joint family structure.
Right.
Insurance and as has insurance as an industry thought about reimagining what you would need when you retire, and not just from a retirement plan fund standpoint, but a 360-degree view to allow you to track your health, to allow you to get instant hospital assistance, to pay your monthly rent. And there are companies like Hippo, for example, right, which have picked up singular or multiple use cases and are bundling products to move away from the traditional way of selling insurance. And I can give you many such examples in the banking industry. But yes, we have to reimagine our products. And
Okay.
Upendra, let me end it by just saying this, that the new customer is going to value your brand for two or three things. One is, if you do not deliver to me what I really need at a optimal cost, I'll not be loyal to you. So therefore, refining user journey, giving it to me on the go, giving it to me when I want it, making ubiquity a hygiene, that's really, really important. I think the other big piece is your brand affinity factor aligning with my own philosophy, equal to what does your brand really stand for?
Hmm.
Does your brand stand for a social cause? Is that social cause important to me? Or you're just someone who's trying to position yourself as a luxury player but not offering value for money? So some of these
Sure.
mega trends are going to force us to change the way we are looking at products, and we'll have to simplify them. And we can discuss more around how product simplification can happen in BFSI. But yeah, that's where we are
Okay.
headed: simplification, value for money, ubiquity.
So sorry, I must ask you this, and you and I have been around the block in some fairly reputed large institutions, trustworthy, right? One of the biggest challenges is in influencing change. And this question is applicable for all of us at every point of time in our careers, right? Any tips in terms of what has worked for you when you've tried to trigger or steer a change or maneuver a change?
So I think the first principle for me personally, when you want to trigger a change, is you have to go deep inside yourself to figure out whether you're convinced about the change or not. Because half the battle is won if you are clear about whether you're convinced, and because if you're convinced, you will find a way to solve it, right? So that's step one. I think the second big step uh, is it really what the customer wants? I'm a
Sure.
firm believer of customer backwards. You put in the you put the customer in the center, right? And you think whether the customer wants it or not. And I think the third one, I, by the way, recently learned this phrase and I love it. It's called eat your own dog food.
Okay, I'm writing this one down. All right.
Okay, which essentially means, buddy, you launched a product, use it before, trying to take it to the market and making other people suffer. So
I love this one.
truly go through the customer journey, right? Experience, be dishonest. And I think another one is fail fast. It's okay to make
Sure.
mistake. Nobody, has done well in their lives or built impactful franchises without failing. So fail, it's good to fail actually. But learn fast, repivot very fast, don't have long learning cycles. And I think another one of my favorites is don't fall in love with your baby. Ever. You've created something, don't love it so much that when it's time to reimagine it, you're scared. You can't hear me. You can't hear me. I can't hear you.
Okay, now you're back. All right, I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you also.
All right, sorry. Okay. So Saru, I want to move to the next segment, which is largely many of us do businesses, intermediaries and partners, right? So in insurance, you have banker, you have agents, and so on and so forth. In banking, you work with DSAs and a whole lot of other distribution partners, and most of these are offline. Any trends that you've seen in the context of partners and enablers like intermediaries and DSAs and agents? What's happening out there?
So I think, and I'll give you this, perspective as also as a user of, financial services. I think there are three or four, things out there. One is the salesperson who's coming to sell to you, Upendra, really telling you whether this product is beneficial to you or not? Or are you being pushed a product where I'm making more revenue? I think
Okay,
that question is out there, and a lot of people, because knowledge has become free, everything is Googleable. And if you have a little bit of time, you will, Google and you will, be able to quickly do comparisons yourself. People are increasingly figuring out that products that they're being, sold or they have been sold are not necessarily the best products if they're linked to your financial goals. I'll give you an example. Okay. I took a home loan 5 years, 10 years, 15 years ago. Did my bank proactively call me to say, Saru, guess what? In the last, 8 quarters, the repo rate has been going down quarter on quarter. And, it's going to continue to, remain low. And this is the best time for a, home loan. So why don't you come to me and give me some more, savings account balances or something else, and I'll reduce your 15-year-old mortgage home loan, right, or your mortgage from the 8.5% to a 7.1%. Will anyone ever tell
sure.
you the person who sold you
Possibly
a
not.
product has forgotten about you and moved on to the next sale? So who is,
Correct.
taking a 360-degree view of a customer's finances and, more importantly, hand-holding him or her through the journey of his financial goals and life, right? The second big, right, trend out there is churning. I was your RM in bank A, I quit, I joined bank B, I called you, you like me, you trust me, I move your money to bank B. After 3 years, I get promoted, I move to bank C, I move you into that bank. And across all the various stints I had as an RM, Upendra ended up having 5 bank accounts, buying
Right.
multiple products, none of which may be in sync with the financial goals he or she really has. Now, the amount of human effort that is involved in truly giving you a 360-degree view of your, of your finances, be it on loans, be it on investments, be it on employee provident fund, be it on
Hmm.
national savings scheme, be it on
Hmm.
real estate you invested in, gold, stocks. I think it needs a mammoth effort, and there
Hmm.
comes in, AI or a machine learning program which will actually calculate it to you, match it to your
Hmm.
risk profile, and keep you well informed and tell you what to do when, without any bias. There are a lot of human biases involved in what you're sold as a consumer, right?
Sure. So tell me, Saru, if I'm a bank and I'm working with intermediaries, what should I be doing differently today?
I think if you're dealing with an intermediary, I'll give you a let me give you a interesting example. I'm sure most people on this call find time to go to a gym or eat various kind of specific food types, or are on be healthy and fit, right?
Right.
How many of us are spending half an hour a day or half an hour a week or half an hour a month in sorting out our finances?
Sure.
I'm not sure if many of us are, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that nobody is demystified finances, and four or five things that each one of us can do. And I think fintech is changing the way users are experiencing financial services. First thing you could do as a user is ask the right questions. For example, what is the implication of this rate of interest for me? What is the return that this product has given in the last 5 years? What are some of the market conditions under which this return will not be earned by me? What is the current rate of inflation? Is the current rate of inflation going to keep pace with how much money I will need 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? Now those are questions that if we are asking, many intermediate or answering because they're busy selling the product that is available on the table. And there are companies like ours, by the way, right? IND is attempting exactly to do this, is to demystify your personal balance sheet through a complex AI, and powered by a by many algorithms, churning data out and informing you about where you're going wrong real time in managing your portfolio. And it will be fintechs like these which will change this, or some
So,
of the
Saru, my
banks.
question, sorry. So, Saru, I get the case for fintech, right? My question is, I'm sitting in Barabanki, okay? I'm the product manager of a bank, and I have a distributor partner sitting in Barabanki, addressing the needs of a SME entrepreneur sitting there, all right, with a 20 lakh turnover, okay? So my question is, yes, you can have fintechs reaching that entrepreneur, but there are still going to be very wide sections in the market where there will be a reliance on the intermediary. So my question is, as you have the likes of IND Wealth progressing and doing a ton of amazing work, what is it that I, as a product manager in a bank, can do better or differently to empower that distributor person of mine in Barabanki?
I think the first thing that you need to do is to ensure that the salesperson is selling what the customer needs, and that begins with having a very simplified, let's call it a calculator, Upendra, for lack of anything else. Are
Sure.
all salespeople carrying a calculator which is doing a two comparison for you on why this product is beneficial for you or not?
Okay.
Right? So that's one. I think the other is the salesperson committing on behalf of the financial institution, even if the salesperson leaves that company, that your financial goals will be at the heart of the product over the long term, right? All banking relationships for each one of us will last 15, 20, 30, 40 years, or and many times will outlast our own lives.
Sure.
There is no product manager who's reimagining, refreshing your financial goals from time to time. I mean, the only time I filled, a profile form was when I bought a mutual fund. I don't remember, right, going back to the same, bank or financial institution to fill my profile form again.
Got it.
My needs have changed, right? I mean, when I started investing, I was 22, and now I'm 50. Uh, my needs have changed. So, how
And
a
you're a
product
millionaire,
manager,
so which is good.
no, but not at all, I wish. But Upinder, product managers are not thinking about the longevity of the relationship. They're
Hmm.
really thinking about selling it here and now and coming up with pitches and product wrappers, if you will, on buy this because this is the flavor of the year, or this is the flavor of the quarter, and that's a strategic miss.
Got it. But in a real sense, do you think a manufacturer, so a manufacturer could be a credit card, an insurance company, a loan provider, can they truly be objective? Because A, they will never have a complete basket. B, their risk appetites will differ for a bunch of reasons. So if you're looking at the future, do you ever really think a manufacturer can be as consumer centric and oriented as an intermediary or a distributor, so to speak?
But you know uh, Upendra, that's also therefore the trade-off is right, because what you're really asking me at the core of it is doing what is right for the customer in the long run the right thing to do at all? The answer is a
Yes,
yes. It is the right thing to
but
do forever,
but
and I
that is
think,
my opening question.
yeah,
That is going to destroy value for you.
absolutely, it will. However, we will create new pockets of value, right? So I think
Correct.
old pockets of value will get replaced by new pockets of value.
Is the crux of it.
So let me give you an example, okay? Uh, let's say that you had a personal CFO who did everything for you, and all that the person charged you was a recurring 500 rupees a month, and
Sure.
took care of dispassionate advisory, right? Ensured that your portfolio is managed for the next 30 years. Even if the person quits, the platform is taking care of it, right? Because it's all managed and automated and running through machine algorithms, machine learning, or through AI. And then all you're paying, right, is a fixed amount of money for the rest of your life.
Correct.
Would you be willing to pay this consulting fee every month, to someone who's automated your financial life and is telling you what you need to do?
Clear.
So that's a new pocket of revenue, right, that you created by destroying value of selling the wrong product and earning some revenue, right?
Sure. Okay, so I was thinking aloud if there was an example for the broader audience as well. So I was reading the biography of Igor at Disney, right? Or his autobiography actually. And he was saying it was such a brutal call for him to take when he said that when I go direct, I'm going to give my content free. And and he said it was so challenging to go to the board and say, I'm going to give my content free on that platform because I knew that's where the market was heading. And that call had such long term implications, it's unbelievable. And that scale is mammoth. It's truly mammoth for a guy. So the reason I'm sharing that is I don't think this is just about talk and gas. There are people who are doing it. They are doing this in very large multinational organizations of mammoth proportions. And those calls are being taken and they are redefining. And why I'm saying this is quite often one believes that this is great theory which gets written by futurists on articles. But the reality is there are practitioners and there are people who are doing it and reinventing it. and they're not very far from a touch on the mobile screen right now with Hotstar.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Agree with you.
Okay, so now you're on this entire new uh, super highway of digital, high tech, fast speed, and so on, right? There are a bunch of guys who are still living in a world where they're getting overpowered by this wave of digitization, right? So a couple of questions have come in terms of what's going to happen to the corporate bankers, what's going to happen to the middle office guys, right? So if I'm a banker today, I mean, I'm not sure really a banker is, but let's say I'm an employee in a banking outfit. If I'm a corporate banker, um, if I see all this big data digitization going on in young kids coming and cracking code and saying, I can manage a relationship better than you, what should I be doing there? I mean, there are only so many IND wells that I can join. What should I be doing as a professional, as an employee to survive and to do well?
I think so. I think fundamentally, to me, Upendra, the core philosophy of a career, right? Whenever you started in whatever circumstances, uh, will still remain intact, right? So let's talk about what those core philosophies are, and how should all of us think about it. I think
Hmm.
the first and foremost is your ability to reskill yourself. That cycle will increase dramatically in the future. So,
Okay.
maybe you and I needed to reskill ourselves once every few years. And uh, I mean, so we did a graduation, then we did a post graduation, and then some of us, after a few years, went and did another executive course, right? So maybe our reskilling cycles were 5, 10, 15 years after we had done our PG. That's
Sure.
going to dramatically change. And everybody who's now joining the workforce will have to learn to reskill uh, maybe once every 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, because unless you don't reskill, you're going to find it hard to earn good money. So I think that's
Hmm.
one. I think the second is knowledge is really free. There is nothing that you cannot study or learn at a reasonable price. And I would encourage everyone. I mean, I'm, by the way, now by the way, trying to embark on a journey to see if I can start to learn a language, right? I want to learn R. I'm not an engineer. Myself that if I don't understand how to cut data, right, and how variables are linked to each other, how will I be able to lead a team uh, to build a mega data warehouse which can solve financial problems of people, right? So I think the philosophy of wanting to to learn what is happening around you is just super important. And anyone who's not thinking about data, who's not thinking about consumer trends, who's not thinking about which is the next big phase which your users are looking at, is going to lose out. So keep learning, yeah, keep studying. Actually, every 1 year, 1.5, 2 years, all of you should be doing a Coursera course, or Harvard course, or it's all available right online. I mean, I've done a couple since I left my previous company and joined this, because I realized that I'm outdated. My
So
lingo is
Saru,
outdated. Really,
so
I'll do
Saru,
that.
I host a podcast called Pathbreakers, and a couple of months back, I was speaking with Ajit Balakrishnan, the guy who started Rediff. The guy is, I think, 72 or 73. He gets up at 5 in the morning, and you know what he does? He's learning machine learning, and he's doing code.
Yeah.
Okay, so I it resonates so loudly. I hear so many people saying that, hey, I don't know what I should upskill. I don't know where. I don't know how. The reality is there are so many tools and resources available. You just need the inclination, you need a mobile, and you need the time, and you make the time. It's there, right? And and I'm glad that you've raised it. I think it's so extremely important. The answers are out there. I think we just need to go and grab them and face the reality. If someone like yourself, who's worked for as many years as you have no qualms in saying, hey, I need to roll up my sleeves and learn. And I think that's the deepest, most impactful message, I think, for each and every one of us, honestly. And it's high time that I think we faced up to it. And that's a reality. It's a treadmill that we're on.
Absolutely. And have fun with it, yeah. I think, the one aspect I didn't talk about at all, maybe enjoy what
Huh.
you're doing. One life to live, yeah. Live it up, have fun, be curious, enjoy yourselves, be happy.
Okay. There's another question in the context of with consumer centricity and a bunch of this new age emerging kick-ass tech, um, comes a huge subject of customer privacy, right? So, so there are many conversations going around the block in terms of equating intimacy to lack of data privacy. Any take on that?
So I think I have maybe three or two or three comments to make on that. I think the
Sure.
first one is that most of the Gen Z, okay, is technologically smart enough to know when they want their social media footprint to be visible and when they want it to be invisible.
Sure.
I learn more about data privacy from my son equal to social media footprint than perhaps I learn from anyone else, because uh, I think the kids have a hack for everything, right? They know exactly what they want to leave as a footprint in social media or not. I think the second part linked to this is, are we doing enough about educating the entire cross section of society, from youngsters to elderly people, on what is safe and what is not safe? I think this whole debate on data privacy and a lot of this comes from frauds that happen, right? In the end, what really hurts you is if somebody does a fraudulent transaction, right? So I misuse your data and sell you something or run away with your money. And I don't think we are doing enough as a community in coaching people on how to find a fake post versus a genuine post, right? Or a
Sure.
fake link versus a genuine link. And a lot more, needs to be done from a consumer awareness standpoint on that front, especially for people who, while have access to the internet, but are not digitally savvy and even have language barriers. I mean,
Hmm.
India is going to expand in the tier 2, tier 3 cities. Financial inclusion is going to, move us forward. And we're already, a country with the maximum number of, so it's just much more needs to be done, Upendra, by brands, just to educate you about the safety of your information, and, and how to recognize the truth from, what's fake. I think
Okay.
we are not even scratching the surface on what needs to be done.
Got it. So, Charu, a couple of questions as we head towards the end. One is, uh, what's the relevance of the human connection? So my question is, there's so much digitization, there is so much data, right? Um, and then at the other end, you see consumers are going through a whole lot of crap because they're losing the human connection. I know it sounded philosophical, but it's actually becoming even more real. So what's that fine balance between getting a shake hand and giving that crap load of data to make sure that it's working?
So if you ask me, I think the world will, remain phygital forever. And, by phygital, what I basically mean is, you and I built a human connection today, digitally, right?
Sure. Of course.
So the human connection was, built using technology seamlessly. And I think that's, that's how, so the human heart, right, wants, I think, stuff delivered at his or her own convenience. I would want things to be delivered to me basis what I really require, and that can be delivered digitally, right?
Sure.
If you don't want it digitally, you are welcome to walk into my branch, have a cup of coffee with me. I'll take a piece of paper and I'll write it out for you and share with you, right?
Sure.
Because to me, I think the lines between the old way of banking, or the old way of interactions versus the new way of interactions, will always have a human touch. I don't think
Got it.
the human touch will ever go away, Upendra. uh, I
Okay.
think the spirit of it will be transmitted digitally, because if I understand you very well as a user, and I'm able to give you the convenience able to buy your vegetables on your Apple device. And now Sweden, by the way, right, has embedded chips in people's hands. I don't know if you saw the news or not, but I found it really fascinating. Many youngsters in Sweden, have taken to actually getting a chip, right, in their hand, and they're saying, now I'm hands
Right.
free, no wallet, no nothing, and I'm able to do everything seamlessly, right? It's got your ID card on it, it's got your credit card information on it. It's not taking away the human touch. I think it's simplifying human life and leaving you time to spend on whatever you really love spending time on.
Got it. So I'm going to ask you a two-layered question. One is in the context of COVID, and the other is assuming that you had a looking glass. Okay. So as a crystal ball, sorry. So as we come out of COVID, whenever the hell that is, and when you look into your little crystal ball, what do you think are the two or three things which are going to fundamentally change in banking financial services?
See, I think we have all learned how to deliver businesses working from home. If you asked
Sure.
me 20 years ago, could I imagine, delivering numbers without doing a morning huddle, physically, or without tracking whether the sales guys come into the office or not, or, without tracking if the paperwork is complete or not. I mean, there is this inherent human desire in the old sales world of having, your team around.
Sure.
I think the whole COVID situation has taught us how to inherently work remotely and yet be successful in delivering.
Okay.
I mean, we're using Zoom. Zoom did an IPO all done virtually, right? They never met. It was all done virtually, correct? And an IPO, successful IPO was delivered by Zoom. While it's not a BFSI company, but they showed the way of how it can be done.
Saru, we've kind of come to the end. Okay, Monica, are you there? Monica,
Yeah, yeah.
I thought like we're kind of wrapping up, but I was
Hmm.
wondering if there's anything that you wanted to ask Saru or anything that you wanted to quiz her on or rag her on. I'm not sure when you get the chance next again.
Ragging, I mean, that was something which we didn't, I mean, I didn't do in college. We were anyway ragged like that
Good
only. We were always
disclaimer.
ragged. Anyway, I mean, I don't think I was a very, very regular kid. I was always moving around outside the classroom. So, what is your message? I mean, I would like to ask you one question. What is your message for the young generation? How should they, especially with respect to the resilience, I mean, how how do they strengthen themselves? The inner, there's so much of pressure and negativity in the environment. It's very difficult to hold on to yourself. With the best of intentions, it's very difficult. How does one do that?
How to make children resilient, Monica? That's like a amazing question. I'll try to take a shot at answering it. It's
Yeah.
a
She'll
difficult
say
question.
download IND Wealth.
No,
That
but
will make
Sorry.
that will
yeah.
make them financially smarter and financially resilient. For sure, that I can, that I can assure you.
Hmm.
But I think Monica, isn't that what our parents worried about when they were raising us? To me, I think as a parent, there is a, and maybe I'm oversimplifying this in my mind, but I think as a parent, you're always worried about your offspring. And, our parents, when they were bringing us up, embodied some core philosophies in us. And I think children are learning all the time from school, college, friends, and a lot of it from us, right? So each and every day, as we are navigating the change around us, and our generation has navigated a lot of change. We may not realize it, but we are the ones who saw Lehman Brothers happen, right? There was a
Yeah.
huge economic crisis. People's wealth was wiped out overnight, and these were people who were in their 50s and 60s. We then, now are undergoing a major pandemic, which is going to change the way businesses, will bounce back, not bounce back. New business ideas will need to come. It's going to change the kind of salaries people will earn, right? Many people are going to be jobless, right? So you reinvent yourself. And our children are learning through this entire journey, right? And what is resilience, right? To me, is about having faith, about having confidence, about being curious, about always learning, and sometimes just taking a chill pill and letting the storm pass. It's a combination of all of that they're learning from us, no, Monica? I think, and I'm trying to
Yeah.
take it out of your question. It's a difficult one.
See, also, I think one more thing that's happened is when we were growing up, there were not so many layers. You know, the layers, like, for example, let's say eating out as a layer. I mean, it was all very, the whole thing was very simple. It was very scaled down. Today, I think as the layers are getting peeled off, it's becoming, it's a painful learning process. I think for us, life was simple. We didn't have those layers built up, social media and all this spending and impulse buying. I think all these layers that were there over the personality, that was all, nothing was there actually. It was just a very simple scaled down life. But for
Got
this
it.
generation to unlearn, it's to peel off these things and to live that very scaled down life, I think that itself is difficult learning, and they get shaken up by that itself. They get what to say, anxious, or what do you say, if you can't swipe your card and buy online, or you can't order food online or something like that. I don't know. I think our that unlearning for this generation is difficult, and to live a scaled down life, very simple scaled down life. For us, I think that eating out and all things were just non-existent. Those
Yeah.
expenditures were not there, those avenues were not there, nothing was there. you know
So, Monica, just to add to what you were saying, as you say, chill out. So I thought as we conclude this session, but since you raised that topic, so Vijay Shekhar Sharma was talking on some other forum, and this is when COVID had just started, like it was a few weeks into COVID. He actually said, like, guys, when in your lifetime are you ever going to have a scenario where the entire world just pauses?
Correct.
Yeah.
All right.
That's
So
right.
I love the way that he put it. All of us at some point of time in our lives have always said, oh, I just wish if the world would stop racing around me.
Correct.
We've actually been blessed in a very perverted way with a scenario where literally the world has stopped. You need to
Yes.
recoup, look for your inner stuff, and come out charging. And it is going to be a new
Yeah,
world when you come out charging.
that's right. I think,
So I know you
it's a
haven't
very good
passed yet,
time.
but
Yeah.
it's a
For us
great time for
to,
people to just look in.
yes. Yes, I think it's a great time for introspection. Great time for introspection, scale down your living, and just live a very simple, decent life. All those layers that have been built up, that is something that undoing of it is painful. That undoing it.
Correct.
आपको याद है, Monica, many years ago, there used to be this concept we used to study. I'm sure they study it in college now, also called demonstration effect,
Yeah.
right? Which is, the whole uh, emotional disconnect you would have if your neighbor had more than you did, right? Where you're continuously trying to up your game because you're comparing yourself to to something which you don't really need, right? Then, and that is what the demonstration effect is at the core of what is a need and what is a want. I think
Correct.
over the last so many years, everything is so interconnected. You can have anything now, and it's almost free. That's what our kids are
That's right.
getting used to.
That's right. See, I
Sounds
will I
good.
will give you my example. I'll give you my example. Like when I did my MMS, I'm also from the 1992 batch of NMIMS. It's only me and another friend of mine. Both of us we came out of MMS without a job in hand. I mean, I always think if it was this time, I had no job in my hand, it would have created one social media furor and so much of negativity on my head. But I was not a loser, and I mean, I took my time. I had some family commitments which I completed, and then I got into the career without really thinking कि academics में कुछ होने का है क्या इधर. I mean, but then the thing is that I mean, it never mattered. We got over that time also. But today,
Yeah.
I think it's a panic attack, it's anxiety. I think those things are become, I don't know, the focus on failure is very sharpened, I think, somehow. I don't know what, Upendra, you think, but we are not giving people time to think or, to find their way and to find that. Something is,
Um,
a lot of unlearning has to be
so,
done.
Monica, my simple take on that is, fortunately or unfortunately, an individual is hugely influenced by the environment in which they operate.
Yeah, exactly.
So, if it's a child, it's really about the conversation that she is able to have with her parents. If I
Exactly.
am a graduate, it's hugely influenced by my inner circle. All
Right.
right. So I really think it's about the kind of support and the conversations you're allowed to have. Every
Correct.
individual has amazing innate skills and capabilities, and
Yes.
the outlook is hugely defined by, right? So I keep telling my son, I mean, you have a room, you have a light. There are guys sitting there under the street light. It's really
Yeah.
about the mindset and the determination to make it happen. And one thing I love about COVID, I think it's a great equalizer, it's a great leveler.
Yes, that's right. It also shows,
Okay,
the interconnectedness of everything. I mean, that's one thing. It's not
correct,
that just because I'm staying in a high-rise apartment, I'm escaping from a COVID. It's not like that. Or I'm not escaping.
that's right.
Everything is interconnected. I think that interconnectedness has come out so starkly now, because of the COVID. The
It's a very
interconnectedness of life.
humbling, correct. I think it's
It's
a very
very humbling,
humbling
as you
leveler,
rightly said, it's very humbling.
correct. And
It's
one
very
thing I've
humbling.
gained from this is Saru said that I can come and crash at a penthouse anytime. So, Monica, whenever we are in Gurgaon, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
one upside of this
I'll have to
conversation.
swim. I
Saru
heard I
will
have to
have a
swim in
penthouse, you
Gurgaon.
can come and crash there.
Yeah, but I heard now swimming is it's you have to have a boat to move around in Gurgaon. It's rained and flooded so much.
That is so true. We don't get rain like Mumbai, yaar. I miss the Mumbai vada pav and the Mumbai rain. Big time.
Yeah.
All right, Saru, thank you so
Okay.
much for your
Nice.
time.
Yeah.
Uh, Pleasure catching up with you. Learned a lot and wish
Yeah.
you and the rest of the team all the very best and look after yourself and your family. Monica, thanks a ton. And
Thank you.
everyone on the students team, I know you guys take a lot of effort. Thanks for making this happen, guys.